When the biting cold hit, I thought I'd die in that flash flood, and even as a modern agricultural expert, nature still got me in the end. But the next second, a scorching body heat suddenly wrapped around me, as strong arms pulled me into an embrace. I snapped my eyes open, and through my blurred vision, I met a pair of bloodshot eyes full of anxiety, with lips blue from the cold, belonging to a tall, strong man who was stark naked. His skin was so hot I instinctively flinched, realizing this wasn't my body nor my world, as fragmented memories flooded in, revealing I had traveled to the Duyu dynasty's Oak Haven, where the original Chloe had been widowed shortly after marriage, when her husband was mauled to death by a bear while hunting, leaving her and her brother-in-law Finn, and with heavy snow sealing the mountains and no food left at home. She was freezing and starving last night and died of hypothermia. Meaning the one holding me now is Finn, who returned from foraging. Chloe, you're awake. Finn's voice was hoarse and trembling, and as his tense body relaxed, his arms instinctively tightened, but then he suddenly remembered modesty, hurriedly loosening his grip, as his ears turned red, and he clumsily grabbed the old burlap to wrap me up, which was when I realized our clothes had been removed, leaving our skin pressed together, and though there were still snowflakes on him, he insisted on warming me with his body heat, the searing heat coming through the skin with the pure warmth of a young man, and a subtly hidden heat that made me instinctively flinch, causing his ears to instantly turn bright red and his arms to stiffen. Though he didn't let go, he just murmured, "Chloe, just stay warm a bit longer, or you'll freeze." His openness was tinged with a hint of shyness, making my heart skip a beat, and I replied, "I'm not cold now," I said, my voice hoarse. My voice was weak but calm. Finn was good-looking. His eyes were full of genuine concern. Finn was uneasy. He touched my forehead and fingertips. His frown deepened. "Still cold? Let me hold you a bit longer." He moved to hug me. His movement was open and straightforward. He just wanted to help. I quickly dodged. I propped myself up on the haystack and sat up. I grabbed the only worn-out coat and wrapped it tight. This coat is full of patches. It's the only warm thing in the house. We take turns with it. The hut lets in wind from all sides. In the corner were things left by the original owner's husband. Just a cracked bough and a notched hatchet. "Finn, you wear it too." I pushed the coat toward him. Looking at his hands and feet red from the cold, my heart tightened. The original owner was timid. I owe my life to his genuine care. But Finn pushed the coat back at me. His hand accidentally brushed my palm. The cold touch made us both flinch. He quickly pulled his hand back. He clenched his hand into a fist. He coughed lightly into his fist. "Chloe, you wear it. I'm tough. Cold doesn't bother me." He couldn't hide the shyness in his eyes. The tips of his ears turned red again. Finn pushed the coat back again. "Chloe, you wear it. I'm tough, cold doesn't bother me." He started to get up. "I'll go into the mountains to look for some wild greens. You stay here and wait." I grabbed his icy wrist. "The snow's too heavy, it's dangerous to go into the mountains." "Your brother." The words were on the tip of my tongue. I paused, my gaze steady. "I'm much better now. I'll stay with you and protect this home. We'll figure something out for food. First, let's get you warm." Finn was stunned. His eyes were wide with surprise. The wind and snow raged outside. The coat in my arms and the gaze of the young man before me made me, in this desperate situation, determined to survive and put down roots. Finn was stunned for a moment, then he nodded hesitantly. The surprise in his eyes slowly turned to joy. The two of us huddled by the haystack, warming ourselves by the faint fire. The only sound in the room was the crackling of the fire. The snowstorm outside showed no sign of letting up. Finn couldn't stop worrying. After resting for half an hour, he headed back into the mountains. I couldn't stop him. I just made him wrap his thin coat tighter, and told him to come back soon, and not to go too deep into the forest. I watched over the cold stove. I searched every corner of the hut, and only found a handful of wild herbs, not even half a grain of mixed grains. In my original self's memories, the family was always poor, and my husband's funeral used up the last of our food. Now, with the snow sealing the mountains, the future was uncertain. I squatted by the stove, lighting the fire, figuring out how to make the wild herbs more filling. Then I heard heavy footsteps outside, followed by a gruff voice calling, "Chloe, open up," and it was Greta, the village's notorious snob. I got up and opened the door. The cold wind blew in, bringing snow. Greta was in a patched, thick padded jacket, her hands behind her back. Her eyes swept over the shabby room, full of contempt. She walked straight to the haystack, looked around, and cut to the chase. I heard Finn went into the mountains again, which is a pointless waste of time in this snowstorm, and there's no telling if he'll make it back alive. My face darkened, but I didn't answer. I just stared at her coldly. Greta didn't care. She smiled and said, "My daughter may be a bit plump, but she's hardworking and can do chores, and since Finn is strong and sturdy, I think they'd make a good match. So why not let him marry into my family, as we still have some food stored up, enough to get you through the winter, which would be saving your lives." But the condescension in her words made me uncomfortable. She wasn't doing this for Finn's sake. She clearly just wanted his strong back. To have free labor. I suppressed my anger. "Thank you for the offer, Greta," I said calmly but firmly. "But Finn has to agree to marrying into your family, and if he doesn't want to, don't even think about it," making Greta's smile freeze instantly. Her tone turned sharp. "I think you just want to starve Finn to death with you, so I'm telling you right now, be smart and talk Finn into agreeing. Otherwise, when you freeze and starve to death, your land will go back to the village anyway, so you might as well hand it over as a favor. She gave me a hard glare and slammed the door as she left. The wind and snow rushed in through the door crack, wetting the hay by the door. I closed the door and clenched my fists. It was clear Greta wasn't going to let this go. Soon, Finn came back covered in snow, empty-handed, his face full of disappointment. "Chloe, the snow in the mountains is too deep, and I couldn't find anything." His voice was hoarse, full of guilt. That night, we boiled some wild greens in plain water, just enough to take the edge off. Finn didn't say much, but he kept pushing the few slices of wild greens in his bowl toward me. I quietly put them back and forth. The chill in the room seemed to fade a little. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was figuring out how we'd get by. With heavy snow blocking the mountains, hunting and foraging got tough. I had to find a way to grow some cold-resistant crops, but we didn't even have seeds. The next morning, I told Finn the real reason Greta wanted the marriage. I laid it all out for him. She didn't genuinely want the union. She wanted you for your labor. She wanted to take you on as a worker. Finn clenched his fists, his face flushed red. "I know I'd rather starve to death than go to her house. I want to stay with Chloe, guard my brother's grave, protect the Fletcher family's fields." His honesty and straightforwardness made me more certain than ever that Finn was trustworthy. But we both knew Greta wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, word came in the afternoon. Greta was gossiping around the village, saying I was keeping Finn tied down, holding him back from a better future. Not long after, I saw Greta carrying half a sack of mixed grains, heading to Mayor Mason's house. My heart skipped a beat. I knew they were up to something. Sure enough, by evening, I heard that Greta had found Mayor Mason's cousin Alfie. Alfie was the village rogue, good for nothing, and he'd been eyeing me. I pulled Finn aside. I warned him that Alfie was no good. Stay away from him. Don't let him trick you. Finn nodded. His eyes were full of wariness. I know he's always staring at Chloe. I won't let him near you. Actually, we didn't need to ask around. The village gossip came to us. After Greta found Alfie, she openly said she wanted to force Finn to marry into her family, and promised him half an acre of land if it worked. Alfie already had bad intentions toward me. Hearing this, he immediately agreed. He said he'd help take down the Fletchers, and force me into submission. That night, Finn was down. He sat by the firewood, silent and brooding. Seeing him like that, I quietly boiled a bowl of wild greens in water and brought it over. I whispered that I had his back. "No one can make you do anything you don't want." Finn looked up and met my eyes. His cheeks instantly flushed. He lowered his head and took the bowl. As his hand accidentally touched mine, he quickly pulled back. His ears turned red. Looking at his flustered state, my heart fluttered. He looked down, pushing the wild greens around. His voice was as faint as a mosquito's. "Chloe, I'll protect you. I won't let Alfie succeed." Over the next few days, the snow eased up a little. Finn went into the mountains every day. Even if it was just a handful of wild greens, he never came home empty-handed. I took advantage of the lighter snow to clear a small patch out front, loosen the soil, planning to plant some cold hardy greens after the snow melted. Alfie didn't come mess with us, but I knew he and Greta were up to something. Sure enough, on the afternoon of the 5th day, Greta showed up with a coarse ceramic bowl, smiling from ear to ear. She stood at the door, the bowl in her hand, still steaming. Her tone was unusually warm. "Chloe, where's Finn? I see you've been eating wild greens for days, you poor thing. I cooked some mixed grains at home. Thought I'd bring you some." Alarm bells went off in my head. Greta's always been stingy. Why would she just hand over mixed grains for nothing? I nonchalantly blocked the doorway, not letting her in, my eyes fixed on that bowl of mixed grains. With my emergency medical knowledge, I vaguely detected a faint, strange smell. It was very subtle, mixed in with the grain smell, almost imperceptible. Pushing down my disgust, I forced a cold smile. "Thanks, Greta, but Finn just ate some wild greens I cooked, and his stomach's feeling bloated. I'll keep it for him, and he can have it when he gets hungry," I said as I reached for the bowl, deliberately nudging Finn, who had just come out of the back room, with my elbow, shooting him a wary look. Finn might be simple, but he's quick-witted. He immediately caught on and stood behind me, saying coldly, "I'm not hungry." "Take it back, Greta." Greta's smile dimmed a little. She tried to persuade, "The mixed grains are still hot. It won't taste good cold." "Finn, at least eat some." "No need," I cut in, taking the bowl and setting it by the stove. "We appreciate your kindness, Greta. You should head on back, so you don't neglect your own chores." And seeing this, Greta couldn't push further. She shot us a nasty look and left in a huff. The second she left, I grabbed the bowl and tossed it into the stove. Finn asked nervously, "Chloe, was there something wrong with the food?" To which I replied, "Yeah, laced with knockout drops," nodding and turning to warn him, my fingertips unconsciously touching his arm. "They're up to no good. From now on, no matter what Greta brings, don't touch it. Don't ever let your guard down." Hearing which, Finn went stiff and looked down at my hand on his arm, his cheeks flushing, even his neck turning crimson. He murmured, "I understand, Chloe." The trust in his eyes was mixed with a hint of budding affection. I quickly pulled my hand away, but my fingertips still felt the firmness of his arm. The firewood crackled in the room, making both our faces warm. The air grew thick with awkward tension. I cleared the space in front of the house and found a handful of shriveled vegetable seeds hidden by the previous owner. These were left from last year. It's a gamble whether they'll sprout, but I'm a farming expert. This little task is nothing to me. Finn, on the other hand, cleaned the old hunting bow in the corner and sharpened the notched hatchet. He said he'd stand guard outside to stop Greta and Alfie from causing more trouble. Over the next 2 days, Greta didn't come by. Alfie didn't show up either. The village was a lot quieter, but I knew it was only temporary. They hadn't gotten what they wanted. They definitely wouldn't give up that easily. I told Finn not to go too far into the mountains and to be sure to come back before sunset. I also taught him to identify a few cold-resistant wild greens and herbs. They could fill his stomach and come in handy in emergencies. That day, it started snowing again. Not heavy, but steady. Finn went into the mountains to forage. I stayed home tidying up and gathered the dried wild greens. Just as I finished, I remembered the vegetable patch in front. Worried the snow would bury the seeds, I grabbed some tools and headed out. I planned to build a simple shelter over the patch. I worked on the patch for over an hour. The shelter was only half done when I heard noise from the hut. Sounded like someone struggling, and I heard Greta's voice. My heart tightened. I dropped my tools and ran back. My heart was racing, terrified something had happened to Finn. I pushed the door open and saw a scene that made my blood boil. Greta was yanking hard on Finn's sleeve. Her daughter stood by, looking shy, and Alfie was hiding outside the door, his eyes fixed on the room. Clearly, he was keeping watch. Finn struggled fiercely, his face red, but constrained by propriety. He didn't dare to fight back against Greta. He could only dodge in vain. "You dare show up again?" I grabbed the hoe behind the door and shouted. I rushed over in a few steps, pulled Finn behind me, protecting him. Greta was startled by my fury. She instinctively let go, then forced herself to calm down. "Chloe, this doesn't concern you. Finn must marry my daughter." "Responsible?" I sneered. "You broke in while I was away, barged in and grabbed him. You clearly set Finn up, and you still talk about responsibility?" Alfie outside saw this and burst in. His eyes swept over me darkly. "Chloe, play smart and stay out of this. Finn has gotten involved with my niece. It's only right he marries into the bride's family. If you keep blocking, I'll team up with the mayor and say you're keeping your brother-in-law for yourself, bringing shame to the family, and drive you out of Oakhaven." "How dare you?" Finn roared. He shoved me aside. He shielded me behind him. He glared at Alfie. "Alfie, I'm warning you. Don't you dare touch Chloe. And stop spreading those filthy lies. You want me to marry into the bride's family, over my dead body." He was tall and strong. When angry, his eyes were as sharp as knives. Alfie felt a pang of panic under his gaze, but he still braced himself. "Don't push your luck. You don't get to decide." Greta chimed in. "That's right. You owe us an explanation. Either Finn marries into the bride's family, or you pay as compensation for defamation." The moment he finished, we heard footsteps outside the door. Some villagers were passing by. They heard the argument inside and came in to check on us. Seeing this, I quickly explained everything. I even mentioned how Greta used to come begging with meals. The villagers were already dissatisfied with Greta and Alfie. When they heard that, they got even angrier. Everyone said they'd gone too far. "Greta, you're despicable. How dare you use knockout drops to frame someone? Alfie, you're always after someone else's widowed sister-in-law. Have you no shame?" Greta's daughter was flushed with embarrassment. She covered her face and ran out. Greta was both angry and anxious. She wanted to go after her, but the villagers surrounded her with accusations, and she couldn't get away. Alfie tried to slip away in the chaos, but Finn grabbed him and shoved him hard. He fell to the ground. He scrambled up, too scared to talk back. Taking advantage of the villagers' distraction, he slunk away. Greta, losing all dignity, pushed through the crowd and chased after her daughter. Before leaving, she shot us a fierce glare. The villagers comforted us for a while, and then dispersed. The house finally quieted down. Finn was still tense, gripping my wrist and refusing to let go. His palm was so sweaty it made my skin damp. He looked down at me, his eyes full of protectiveness, his breath quick and shallow. "Chloe, thank goodness you're okay." Fear and worry laced his voice, and his tight grip revealed an unconscious possessiveness. "Chloe, are you okay? It's all my fault for not watching the house." His voice was thick with guilt. I shook my head and whispered, "I'm fine. Thanks to you." Finn looked down at me, his eyes full of protectiveness, the tips of his ears turning red. He remained silent for a long time. After Greta and her daughter fled, Finn stood in the yard gripping a machete, fuming for a while. He wished he could confront Alfie right away. I stopped him and said, "Easy. They'll surely go running to their backer now that they've lost. Let's just keep our heads." Finn was reluctant, but he listened to me. He silently stood guard by the hut, his eyes wary and alert. Sure enough, by evening, a villager came to report, saying that Greta and Alfie were crying on Mayor Mason's doorstep. I knew in my heart, they'd try to blame us first. Mayor Mason has always sided with his cousin Alfie, and he's been eyeing the Fletcher family's small plot. There was no avoiding this trouble. Finn said urgently, "Chloe, we need to go explain to the mayor right now." I shook my head. "Let him come to us. In front of the villagers, the truth will come out." Within an hour, heavy footsteps sounded outside the yard gate. Mayor Mason walked in front, hands behind his back, his face dark as thunder. Greta followed, wailing, clutching a piece of cloth. Alfie was holding his eye, playing up his injury. The three of them barged right in. Chloe, Finn, how dare you? Mayor Mason barked as he entered. How dare you strike an elder? Stirring up trouble, and you won't even kneel and apologize. Alfie immediately chimed in, his voice choked. Mason, you've got to stand up for me. Finn shoved and hit me for no reason at all, and Chloe called me shameless. I can't go on like this anymore. Greta wailed along, Mayor, Finn has ruined my daughter's honor. You need to make him either marry into the bride's family, or pay us for damage to our reputation. Otherwise, I'll bash my head in right here. Finn's face flushed with anger. He clenched his fists, about to step forward. I didn't hit him. You broke into my house and made a scene. Mayor Mason abruptly raised his hand to stop him. His eyes sharp as knives. Shut up, Alfie is your uncle. Elders disciplining the young is only natural. Striking him is a serious offense. And a widow alone with her brother-in-law? That's already against traditional rules. Chloe must have put you up to this. That's why you're so bold. He's openly taking sides, deliberately using traditional rules to suppress us, just to control us. I stepped forward. I stepped in front of Finn. I shot a cold glare at Alfie. You say Finn hit you? Where's the injury? What exactly did I say? Dare to say it clearly in front of everyone. Alfie's eyes flickered. He avoided my gaze. He hid behind Mayor Mason, acting wronged, but he kept sneaking glances at me. More villagers gathered, whispering. Some were whispering. They clearly sensed something wrong. Mayor Mason's face went pale, then red, but he still pushed on. Today, Finn must apologize to Alfie and transfer half an acre of the Fletcher land to Alfie as compensation. Otherwise, I'll report to Arthur, confiscate all your land, and drive you out of the village. I sneered, Mayor, if you want to reason, show the evidence, or do you just want to bully us and steal our land? Even if it costs me my life, I will never admit to it. As for right and wrong, the villagers will decide. Finn stood firmly behind me, protecting me. He said firmly, I did nothing wrong, and I will not apologize. Both sides were at a standoff. Mayor Mason was furious, but he didn't dare to act tough in front of everyone. He could only utter a threat. I'll give you one night to think it over. If you don't have an answer by tomorrow, don't blame me for being ruthless. With that, he slunk off with the other two. Finn tossed and turned that night. He kept muttering, can't let Mayor Mason win. I patted his shoulder. Instead of worrying, let's do something practical. You stay home, I'll go check the fields. Snow had stopped, but the ground was rock hard. Under the moonlight, Finn and I turned the soil. We collected plant ash and mixed it in to enrich the soil. Plant ash keeps heat in and fertilizes, exactly what winter hardy crops need. Then I cut some twigs and built a simple seedling tray. I sprinkled the last bit of cabbage seeds evenly inside. Then I covered it with a thin layer of snow to keep moisture. Finn didn't get these techniques, but he helped without a word. We didn't stop till late. He looked at the tray, eyes full of doubt. Chloe, can vegetables really grow in this snow? I smiled. Don't worry, this method will get the seedlings to sprout early. Next morning, Mayor Mason showed up with Greta, Alfie, and a few villagers, obviously expecting us to cave. So, made up your minds. Mayor Mason clasped his hands behind his back, his tone full of arrogance. I said calmly, Mayor, if you want to judge, come see the fields with me first, then decide. Everyone followed me to the field out back. When they saw the tiny sprouts in the tray, they were stunned. In the dead of winter, cabbage was actually sprouting. That's amazing. Mayor Mason frowned. These gimmicks won't get you off the hook. You still have to make it right. Gimmicks. I crouched down, pointing at the sprouts. I improved the soil all night, and grew this winter hardy cabbage. In a few days, it'll be ready to harvest. The village is running low on food because of the snow, but this cabbage is real food. I can teach everyone this method, so no one goes hungry. The villagers heard this, and saw my lush green cabbage. They could almost taste it. They looked at me with gratitude. Finn and I live off the land, working hard, not loafing around. But Greta kept coming to force Finn to marry into her family, and when she failed, she teamed up with Alfie to drug him. Many in the village saw it, didn't they? The villagers started murmuring. Someone chimed in. No wonder Greta's been making a scene every day. She wanted to take him as a laborer. Chloe's method is amazing. Growing veggies in a snowstorm. Greta's face turned pale. She tried to defend herself, but the crowd drowned her out. Alfie tried to back her up. I turned and glared at him. That dirty little thought you have about me, want me to spill it right now. Mayor Mason saw this, and knew that favoring them anymore would only anger the crowd. His face was a mask of fury. He shot Alfie a vicious glare, and said, we'll discuss this later, then beat a retreat with his men. Finn looked at the sprouts in the seedling tray, his eyes full of admiration. Chloe, you're amazing. I smiled, but I knew Mayor Mason wouldn't let this go. Over the next few days, I took care of the seedlings with Finn, and reinforced the seedling tray to protect them from the snow. The seedlings grew fast, a lush green patch. It was such a comfort. Greta and Alfie hid at home, too scared to go out. The village was peaceful for a few days. I thought we'd have a few peaceful days, but trouble found us again. One afternoon, Mayor Mason came with 2 officers, dragging 2 unconscious men into the yard. They wore tattered army uniforms and were covered in wounds. They were barely breathing, with blood seeping from their foreheads. They were clearly seriously injured. Chloe, follow orders. His tone was icy. Recently, routed soldiers have been roaming. The government ordered every village to take them in. These 2 are your responsibility, plus a deposit of 5 strings of cash, plus a head tax of 7 strings of cash, to be paid within a month. Otherwise, you'll be charged with harboring routed soldiers. My heart sank. This is not about taking in routed soldiers. It's clearly Mayor Mason deliberately making things difficult for us. 12 strings of cash, for us who are now penniless, is undoubtedly an astronomical sum. Finn immediately stepped forward to stop the mayor. Our family can't even afford food. How can we pay taxes? We can't support these 2. You have to, whether you can or not. Mayor Mason was adamant. His tone was full of menace. This is an official order. To defy it is to defy the government. Besides, these 2 are strong, and once they recover, they can help you work. You're actually getting a deal. The taxes and fees won't be reduced by a single cent. If you don't pay within a month, you'll be punished for harboring routed soldiers. This hut and the land will be confiscated. He was pressuring us with every word. He clearly wanted to take advantage of this to control us. Either pay up, or they'll take away everything we have. The officers placed the 2 men on a pile of hay and left immediately. Before leaving, Mayor Mason leaned in close to me and threatened in a low voice. As for you making me and Alfie lose face, I haven't settled that score with you yet. Be wise and pay your taxes obediently. Don't try any tricks. Otherwise, I have plenty of ways to deal with you. With that, he swaggered off. Finn was trembling with rage. Mayor Mason is going too far. He's clearly targeting us on purpose. I crouched down and checked if they were breathing. Fortunately, they were just unconscious from serious injuries. They can be saved. Don't be mad, I said softly. They are 2 human lives too. We can't just let them die. As for the taxes, we'll figure something out. Let's check their injuries first. Finn and I carried the 2 soldiers deep into the haystack and covered them with old burlap to keep the wind out. Finn boiled some hot water. I carefully cleaned the wounds on their faces and hands. The wounds were frighteningly deep. Some were from knives, some from swords, some were still oozing blood. Without quick treatment, they might not make it through the night. Chloe, are we really gonna save them? Finn looked worried. What if they're bad guys? Or what if Mayor Mason sent them to harm us? Besides, we ran out of herbs ages ago. There's no way to treat such serious wounds. I've got my concerns too. Mayor Mason's already got bad intentions. We don't know where these soldiers came from. Saving them might bring us more trouble. But seeing them on the brink of death, I couldn't just walk away. As a modern agricultural expert, I know some emergency medical knowledge. If I left them, they'd die for sure. Save them, I said firmly. Doesn't matter who they are. They're still human lives. As for the herbs, I'll figure something out. Find me some clean cloth strips and take the string off that old hunting bow. Boil it to sterilize, then we can use it as suture thread. Finn was worried, but he did it anyway. He always trusts me. I searched every corner of the hut. Finally, found a small handful of shriveled herbs. The previous owner gathered them for colds. Though not strong, they can help reduce the swelling a bit. I mashed the herbs. Then I leaned in and put them on Luke's shallower wounds. His shoulders and back were tense, but he deliberately breathed lightly, afraid to touch me. When my fingertips brushed his firm shoulder, his Adam's apple bobbed. He whispered, "Thank you, miss. I appreciate it." His eyes landed on my face, curious, with a hint of tenderness. Sam watched from the side, and silently passed me clean cloth strips. But his eyes stayed on my hands as I bandaged Luke. A hint of complexity flickered in his eyes. Finn watched nervously, handing me things when I needed, admiration shining in his eyes. "Chloe, how do you know so much?" he asked softly. I answered casually, "Back home, before I married, I learned some basic medicine from a folk healer. After we treated the wounds, it was already dark. I boiled some wild vegetable soup, fed the 2 soldiers a few sips. Then I stayed with them, watching over them." Finn refused to rest. He sat beside me, clutching a machete tightly, ready for any sound in the dark. Finn and I took turns keeping watch all night. The next morning, one of the soldiers finally started to stir. His eyelashes fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was sharp as a hawk's, scanning the surroundings warily. When he saw Finn and me, he immediately tried to sit up, but collapsed back from the pain of his wound, letting out a muffled groan. "Don't move. You're hurt bad." I hurried over and pressed him down, speaking calmly. "We saved you. We mean no harm." Finn chimed in, "That's right, don't be scared. We won't hurt you." But the soldier remained wary, his eyes fixed on us, his voice hoarse. "Who are you? Where is this? Where's the other guy?" His tone carried the precision of a soldier, giving off a keep-away vibe. Clearly he was on guard against us. "This is Oakhaven. My name is Chloe, and this is Finn, my brother-in-law." I answered truthfully. I deliberately avoided mentioning Mayor Mason's scheming. "We found you unconscious at the village entrance, and brought you back here. The other guy hasn't woken up yet. He's more seriously injured than you, but he's not in danger." The soldier frowned, then after a moment of silence, asked, "Why did you save us?" We're routed soldiers. Keeping us around will just cause trouble. Still, they're 2 lives. We couldn't just let you die, I said calmly, looking straight at him. I probed, which army are you from? How did you get injured and end up unconscious at the village entrance? I needed to figure out their background and character. If they're good men, maybe we can help each other. If they're bad, we need to be on guard in advance. The soldier's eyes flickered, as if hesitating. After a long while, he finally spoke slowly. My name is Luke. His name is Sam. We're from the Western Vanguard. We got ambushed while on campaign. Our unit scattered. We fled all the way here, and passed out. The Western Vanguard has strict discipline and a good reputation. I breathed a slight sigh of relief. What do you plan to do once you're healed? I asked again. Luke's expression darkened. Our unit's gone. We don't know where to go. Maybe just wander around. Finn spoke up from the side. You can stay here and recover. When you're better, you can decide. Our family may be poor, but we've got enough wild greens to go around. Luke looked at Finn, then at me. The wariness in his eyes gradually faded. Grateful for being saved, he said solemnly. Thank you, miss, for saving us. Words cannot express my gratitude. Once I recover, I will surely repay you. On the 3rd day after Luke woke up, Sam finally woke up. He's gentler than Luke. When he learned we had saved him, he insisted on thanking us. His voice was dripping with gratitude. After learning his unit had scattered and he'd been abandoned, Sam's eyes were filled with disappointment. He stayed silent for a long time. Seeing how down they both were, I broke the silence. Since you've got nowhere to go right now, you can stay here and heal up. But I have a rule. We distribute work and rewards based on effort. We protect this home together. No one freeloads. Once you're healed up, I'll help you find a way forward. The two exchanged a glance, then nodded in agreement. Luke said in a low voice, Miss, rest assured, we are not ungrateful people. We'll do our part. I assigned tasks based on their injuries and skills. Luke was less injured and meticulous, so I had him oversee the household supplies while recovering, keeping a log of supplies and firewood. Sam was careful by nature, so I had him tend the seedlings, watering and weeding. He also followed Finn to get familiar with the surroundings. Finn still went into the mountains daily to forage and chop wood. I took care of the fields and changed their bandages. At first, we were a bit awkward with each other. Luke was quiet, silently counting supplies every day, keeping the accounts clear. He never touched anything without permission. Sam was diligent, taking great care of the seedlings. He also often helped Finn chop wood, though still wary of the two. I shared stories from the mountains and taught them to identify wild vegetables. Once, Sam accidentally watered the seedlings way too much and panicked. I smiled and told him, cold hardy seedlings can't stand waterlogging. Just give them a little water, just once every 2 days. As I spoke, I reached out and took his hand, holding the ladle. Adjusting the angle to show him, he stiffened all over, his cheeks flushing. He even held his breath. He obediently followed my movements. Luke sat nearby counting supplies, his gaze casually sweeping over our clasped hands. His fingertips tightened slightly, then returned to normal. But there was a new gloom in his focus. At night, the 4 of us sat around eating wild vegetable soup. Finn would always pass me the only tender leaves in his bowl. Luke would silently push a warm stone to my feet. Sam would even ladle warm soup for me beforehand. Their feelings were both subtle and clear. At night, the 4 of us sat by the fire eating wild vegetable soup. Simple, but it felt safe. Luke brought up the border situation. Sam and Finn listened with great interest. I chimed in occasionally. The atmosphere in the room grew warmer. This rundown hut, with 2 more people, actually started to feel like home. Things are settling down. The seedlings are getting stronger. Luke and Sam are healing up too. But a few days later, an accident happened. One morning, while changing their bandages, I noticed their wounds were red and inflamed. Yellow pus was oozing out. It was clearly infected. They're infected. We need some anti-inflammatory herbs. I frowned and said, we already used up the little herbs we had at home. Not nearly enough. Luke endured the pain and said, Miss, don't trouble yourself. We were soldiers. We can handle a few scratches. No, a bad infection can kill you. I immediately refused. There are herbs in the mountains that fight infection in the cold. I'll go pick some. Finn jumped up. Chloe, I'll go with you. The mountains are dangerous. I don't want you going alone. Luke wanted to come too, but I stopped him. You're not healed yet. Stay home and rest. Keep an eye on Sam and the seedlings for me. Sam also urged. Finn, go with Miss. We'll take care of things here. After breakfast, Finn and I grabbed bamboo baskets and headed into the mountains. We'd barely entered the mountains when it started to snow. Snowflakes fell to the ground, quickly forming a thin sheet of ice. The path got slippery and tough to walk on. Relying on memory and modern farming knowledge, I spotted herbs along the way. Finn led the way with a machete. He'd help me up now and then, afraid I'd slip. Chloe, it's snowing harder. Maybe we should head back, Finn said, worried. I shook my head. Let's keep looking. Anti-inflammatory herbs usually grow on the leeward slope. We can go back once we find them. We trudged along, stumbling with each step. We walked for almost 4 hours. Finally, on a leeward slope, we found dandelion roots, purslane, and other herbs. There were also several honeysuckle vines to treat external infections. Finn quickly picked the herbs and put them in the basket. His face lit up with joy. Great, Chloe, we finally found them. On the way back, the snow was falling even harder. The path got even more treacherous. Finn volunteered to walk ahead and shield me from the wind. He also grabbed the basket and carried it on his back. He kept turning back to help me. The warmth of his palm seeped through my sleeve, steady and hot. When we reached a steep slope, I slipped. He spun around and pulled me into his arms. We staggered a few steps before finding our balance. He held me and didn't let go immediately. His voice was rough. Chloe, easy now, I've got you. His warm breath brushed against my hair, snowflakes fell on both our shoulders, and the romantic tension grew quietly in the storm. When we got home, we were covered in snow. Our hands and feet were frozen stiff. Sam quickly boiled hot water so we could warm up. Luke took the bamboo basket. He looked at the herbs inside. His eyes brimmed with gratitude. I didn't have time to rest. I immediately washed and crushed the herbs, boiled them into a medicinal liquid, cleaned the men's wounds, and applied the herbal paste. Before long, both said the pain in their wounds had greatly eased. Seeing them get better, the weight on my heart finally lifted. Luke and Sam's wounds are getting better. No more swelling or pus. The 4 of us are working together more smoothly. Once the snow stopped, the weather slowly warmed up. I decided to use the good weather to deeply plow the ridges, to expand the planting area, not only to grow enough for ourselves, but also to sell some to cover the taxes. I took Finn and Sam to the field, showed them how to mix plant ash into the soil for better fertility. Plant ash makes the soil richer and also keeps pests and diseases away, so the vegetables grow strong and healthy. Finn and Sam listened very attentively and followed my instructions to spread the ash evenly over the field. Then they used hose to turn the soil deep. Luke was almost healed, so he came to help out. He's strong and turned the soil fast and deep. Soon he had plowed half the field. Then I led them to build a simple seedling shed. We made a frame with thick branches and covered it with old burlap to block the wind and keep the heat in. Then we divided the shed into small sections and sowed different vegetable seeds separately. There were the cabbage seeds from before and the cold hardy spinach and radish seeds I found. I told them, the seedling shed needs to be aired out daily. Don't overwater, just keep the soil moist. Sam took charge of the seedling shed. He'd go check the seedlings before dawn every day, watering and weeding, noting the temperature inside the shed and the growth of the seedlings. When he didn't understand something, he asked me. Finn went into the mountains every day, and besides gathering wild greens, he'd also cut branches to reinforce the seedling shed. Occasionally he'd catch some small game, to give us better meals. Luke still handled the supplies and the accounts. He inventoried all the wild greens, firewood, and herbs, and kept a clear record of them. He even set aside some wild greens to dry and store, in case heavy snow blocked the mountain later. In his spare time, he'd help out in the field too. Looking at the green seedlings, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Miss, this farming method is really something special, way better than what we grew in the army camp." Days passed. The seedlings in the shed grew lush and green. The fields were also well organized. We cleaned the cottage spotless. We also reinforced the walls to block out the cold wind. At night, the 4 of us sat around the fire, discussing plans for when the seedlings are ready. Luke said that once the vegetables are sold, we'll first gather enough for taxes and use the rest to buy some seeds and grain. Sam and Finn nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with hope for the future. This once broken down home gradually regained its vitality and order. After another 10 days or so, the first batch of cabbages was finally ready. The leaves were dark green, plump, and thick. They were much more tender than the usual cabbages the villagers grew. Looking at the full basket of cabbages, Finn said excitedly, "Chloe, these cabbages look amazing. They're gonna fetch a great price." I nodded. "I'll take them to town to sell. You stay here and take care of the seedlings and the hut." Early the next morning, I set off for town with a bamboo basket full of cabbages. The county town was way livelier than Oakhaven. The market was buzzing with noise. Stalls were packed with all kinds of produce. I found a corner and set down my basket. The moment I set out my cabbages, a burly vendor came over. The vendor picked up a cabbage, examined it, and said contemptuously, "Farm girl, how much are these?" "3 for $10, I said. "They're freshly picked." The vendor sneered. "What kind of crappy cabbage dares to charge that price?" "3 for $5, I'll take the whole lot. Otherwise, you won't sell a single one all day." I knew it. He saw I was alone, and was trying to lowball me. I picked up one of my cabbages and compared it to the ones at the next stall. I raised my voice and said, "Sir, look at my cabbages. The leaves are thick, full of juice, grown with plant ash. They're way more tender than ordinary cabbages. 3 for $10, that's a steal." These ordinary cabbages, on the other hand, have thin leaves and even have wormholes. And they dare to charge $8 for 3. Passers-by gathered around. They compared the cabbages from both stalls. Everyone praised my cabbage's quality. The vendor's face turned white and red. He said fiercely, "You dare to cross me? Let's see who dares to buy from you today." I sneered, "Buying and selling is voluntary. What right do you have to stop me? Besides, my cabbages are good, so naturally people will buy them." Just then, a man in a long gown, who looked refined and cultured, walked over. He picked up a cabbage and examined it closely. He even tasted a leaf. He praised, "This cabbage is truly tender. Excellent quality, miss. I'll take all your cabbages. At the price you said, 3 for $10, plus an extra $2 per cabbage, as a deposit for your future crops." I was stunned for a moment. I quickly thanked him. The man smiled and said, "I'm Victor, owner of the Golden Vine restaurant. My restaurant could use vegetables of this quality. From now on, whenever your crops are ready, bring them straight to the Golden Vine. I'll pay you a fair price." The vendor saw this and backed down. He slunk away. Victor had someone move the cabbages. He paid and even left his address. Clutching the heavy money, my heart was full of joy. This was my first pot of gold in this new world. Not only would it cover part of the taxes, but I could also buy some seeds and grain. On my way back, my steps were light. My heart was full of hope for the future. Victor was courteous and kind. After paying for the cabbage, he invited me to sit at the Golden Vine restaurant. The place was elegant and tidy. All the customers were well dressed. It was clearly a well-known place in the county town. He poured me a cup of hot tea and cut to the chase. "Miss Chloe, the cabbage you grow is really good quality. Way better than what regular farmers grow. I want to set up a long-term deal with you. I'll buy all the vegetables you grow, and at 20% above the market rate. How about it?" I was thrilled and surprised. I agreed immediately. "Thanks for believing in me, Victor. I won't let you down on the deliveries." Victor nodded with a smile. Then his tone grew more serious. "But let me warn you about one thing. There's been a gang of thugs hanging around the market lately. They pick on solo vendors for extortion. Since you're going into town alone, be very careful. Try to avoid secluded routes." He also told me the purchase prices of several anti-inflammatory herbs. He said if I had any in stock, I could bring them to the Golden Vine restaurant, and he'd buy them at a fair price. After leaving Victor, I took the money and headed straight to the grain shop, cloth store, and tool shop. I bought 2 bags of mixed grains and several bolts of coarse cloth. I also added a new hoe and bamboo baskets. I also bought some wound medicine for Luke and Sam. After shopping, I remembered Victor's warning. I avoided the narrow back alleys and took the main road on the way back. The trip was safe and incident-free. When I got home, Finn, Luke, and Sam were waiting at the gate. When they saw me, all 3 sighed with relief. Finn rushed over and took the bamboo basket and hefted it in his hands, his eyes wide with surprise. "Chloe, you must have made a good amount of money, huh?" I nodded with a smile. I laid out all the supplies I had bought. Sam touched the coarse cloth and said gratefully that they could finally get clean clothes. Luke stared at the new hoe thoughtfully, noting that with these tools, tilling the land would be much faster. That night, I cooked a full pot of mixed grains. I also stir-fried some greens. It was our first full meal together. Around the fire, their faces held smiles they hadn't worn in a long time. Finn kept piling food onto my plate. Luke and Sam kept raising their cups to thank me. Seeing all this, I felt even more certain that if we stick together, we'll definitely protect this home, and our days will only get better. After closing the deal with Victor, I started planning to expand the farm. Besides cabbage, I wanted to grow some cold-resistant herbs and rare wild greens. I could sell them to the Golden Vine restaurant, and also use them for medicine, another way to make money. Early the next morning, I packed some dry rations in a bamboo basket, planning to head into the wild mountains alone to find seeds. Finn was going hunting in the mountains, and Luke and Sam needed to tend to the seedlings. Everyone had their own tasks. The wild mountains were rarely visited, and the trails were rough. Most of the snow had melted, but it was still slippery. Using my modern farming knowledge, I searched carefully along the sheltered slopes and streams. Hard work paid off. I found not only cold-resistant buplurum and astragalus seeds, but also roots of rare shepherd's purse and wild ferns, enough to grow new seedlings. As the sun set, I headed back with a basket full of seeds. From a distance, I saw chaos at the seedling shelter. Sam was swinging a stick, trying to drive something away. Finn came running with his bow. Luke was standing guard with a hoe. My heart tightened. I rushed over, only to find the seedlings inside had been chewed to pieces. A big, tough badger bared its teeth and lunged at Sam. "Watch out," I shouted. Finn quickly drew his bow and shot. The arrow nicked the badger's ear, sending it running in fright. Sam stumbled back. I hurried over to check his injury. The badger had scratched his forearm. The wound was raw and bloody, with blood still oozing from it. Don't move. I took out the medicine I had with me, cleaned the wound, stopped the bleeding, and bandaged it up. I worked fast. Sam bore the pain, his face filled with guilt. It's all my fault. I didn't protect the seedlings, and now I'm hurt. I patted his shoulder and said, "It's not your fault. Badgers are fierce. You did your best." Looking at the wrecked seedlings, I looked determined. "We'll start tonight. Let's set traps to keep the wild animals away. We can't let them ruin the seedlings again." After dinner, I led the three of them to work around the seedling shed. Using modern hunting techniques, I directed Finn to cut thick branches. We dug waist-deep pits around the shed. The bottom was lined with sharp wooden spikes. Then we covered them with branches, weeds, and a thin layer of soil. We left only a narrow path to lure the badger in. I also had Luke and Sam reinforce the fence. They tied the branches with thick hemp rope to prevent the animal from breaking through. Finn looked at the trap, curiosity in his eyes. "Chloe, will this really catch the badger?" I laughed. "Badgers are greedy, and they follow fixed routes to forage. We scatter some chopped wild greens near the trap. It'll definitely fall for it." Luke crouched to inspect the trap, his tone approving. "This trap is cleverly designed. It's both hidden and effective. It's more practical than the ones in the army." The next morning, just at dawn, we were woken by a noise nearby. Finn grabbed his bow and rushed out. The badger had fallen into the trap. It was struggling anxiously, but sinking deeper. It was stuck on the spikes, unable to move. "We caught it. We really caught it," Finn shouted excitedly. Luke fetched a rope. He carefully looped it around the badger. He dragged it out of the pit. "This badger is pretty big, with glossy fur and firm meat." I smiled and said, "The fur will fetch a good price, and the meat is edible. We can also give some to Victor, to maintain our partnership." Sam also breathed a sigh of relief. Now the seedlings are safe. No more worries about animal raids. While processing the badger, Luke and Sam worked swiftly, clearly trained in the army. Watching their skilled hands, I felt more and more that taking them in wasn't just saving 2 lives, but also adding strength to this household. And after this, they gained even more respect for my abilities. We worked together even more smoothly. Things were slowly looking up for the Fletcher family. The seedlings were thriving. We also caught a badger. Word spread to the village. Many villagers came to congratulate us. But Greta and Alfie were hiding in the shadows, their eyes burning with jealousy. Alfie had always had ill intentions toward me, and after that public humiliation, he held a grudge against me. Watching Finn get to be with me day and night only made him burn with jealousy. He spent all day egging Greta on to get revenge. I was already on guard. I knew those two wouldn't give up so easily. I made sure Luke and Sam took turns keeping watch at night. And around the ridges, I set up straw ropes coated with mud and a warning bell. Once the rope was touched, it would leave mud stains, and the bell would ring, warning us of any disturbance. In the dead of night, everything was silent. Everyone was fast asleep. Suddenly, a faint noise came from outside the yard. I jolted awake. I nudged Finn beside me, and motioned for Luke and Sam to keep quiet. We quietly got up, and crouched by the window to observe. We saw Greta and Alfie, sneaking over to the ridges. Alfie was holding a stick. He frantically stomped on the ridges, destroying the seedlings. Greta stood watch, glancing toward the hut from time to time. "That bastard." Finn gritted his teeth and wanted to charge out. I quickly grabbed him, whispering, "Not yet. Wait until they get closer. Catch them red-handed." It wasn't long before Alfie stepped on the rope. His pant legs were covered in mud. The warning bell rang. They were terrified out of their wits. They turned to run. "Stop them," I yelled. Finn charged out first. He grabbed Alfie by the collar and slammed him hard to the ground. Greta ran fast. In a flash, she was gone. Alfie struggled to get up, but Luke held him down tight. He couldn't move. I hurried over to check the seedlings. My finger got cut on a broken stem. A bead of blood appeared. Sam rushed over immediately. He took my hand and wrapped it with a clean strip of cloth. His movements were gentle yet urgent, his eyes full of worry and care. "How could you be so careless?" he asked. As Luke also came over, he took out the dried herbal powder and handed it to me. His voice was low. "This'll stop the bleeding and inflammation. Don't get it wet," he said, while Finn gripped my other hand, his face full of guilt. "It's all my fault for not taking better care of you," he said, as the three of them surrounded me. Behind their care, each hid their own feelings, warming my heart. After Alfie was caught, he made up every excuse, claiming he was just passing by the field and had accidentally stepped on the seedlings. I snorted coldly, pointing at the mud on his pants. "The mud on this straw rope is one of a kind, only found around the field. If you were just passing by, how'd it get on you? And why are you here late at night?" I deliberately let Greta escape, to preserve the complete evidence. Then I gathered the damaged seedlings, the mud-covered straw rope, and the pieces of clothing that fell off Alfie. With the evidence and Alfie in custody, I went straight to Mayor Mason's house. I invited a few impartial villagers to serve as witnesses. When Mayor Mason saw Alfie caught with solid evidence, His face turned pale and red by turns, but he still wanted to let him off easy. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Alfie didn't mean any harm. Misunderstanding? I cut him off and laid out the evidence one by one, sneaking into the field late at night, deliberately destroying seedlings, and trying to peep into the hut to harass me. Is that a misunderstanding too? Earlier, Greta forced a marriage, and they drugged and schemed against us, all of which the villagers saw. Is this also a misunderstanding? Several villagers chimed in. Chloe is right. Greta and Alfie have always been up to no good. Alfie's just jealous that the Fletchers are doing well, so he's messing with them. Alfie was left speechless. His head sank lower and lower. He was trembling all over. When Greta heard the news, she hid at home, not daring to come out, and let Alfie take all the blame. In the end, with everyone as witness, Mayor Mason had to act fairly. He fined Alfie to compensate us for our losses, and made him apologize to us publicly. After this, Greta and Alfie were completely disgraced. They never dared to bully others in the village again, much less provoke the Fletcher family. We handled Greta and Alfie's mess. We tended the seedlings and herbs. We sold Victor the pelts and some herbs, and stashed away a nice chunk of money, enough to pay Mayor Mason's sky-high taxes. I figured we'd get through this time peacefully, but on the day the taxes were due, trouble came knocking again. Mayor Mason barged into the yard with 2 officers. The officers carried wooden clubs, fierce looks, aggressive stance. The lead officer, Lewis, glanced around. His eyes landed on Luke and Sam. Unfriendly gaze. Mayor Mason, who are these 2? They look like strangers. Mayor Mason immediately chimed in. Officer Lewis, these 2 are routed soldiers. Chloe is harboring deserters and delaying the taxes, so I've come to ask you to uphold justice. I pulled out the money and handed it to Officer Lewis. Officer, this is the tax. Not a penny missing. Please count it yourself. Luke and Sam are routed soldiers, but they are not deserters. We have witnesses from the camp. We only took them in to recover from their injuries. There's nothing wrong with it. Officer Lewis took the money. He weighed it in his hand. Then he deliberately tossed it on the ground and stomped on it. This chump change. He sneered. You dare to cheat me with this, seeing as these 2 are obviously deserters who should be sent to hard labor by law to pay off the tax. If you know what's good for you, you'll cooperate, or I'll arrest you too. As he spoke, the 2 officers moved to grab Luke and Sam. Stop. I quickly stepped in front of them. I said firmly, they're hurt and haven't done anything wrong, so on what grounds are you arresting them? Finn immediately grabbed his hunting bow and stood by me. He gently put his arm around my shoulder, pulling me behind him. Luke also stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with me. His sharp eyes locked onto the officers. He whispered to me, Miss, step back, we've got this. His warm breath brushed against my ear, carrying a reassuring strength. Sam quietly moved to my side, reaching out to lightly rest a hand on my arm, in case the officers made a sudden move. The 3 of them formed a ring around me, creating a protective barrier. Their subtle concern grew clearer in the tense atmosphere. Officer Lewis was intimidated by my presence. He was taken aback for a moment. Then he arrogantly raised his wooden club, brazenly breaking the law. In Oakhaven, I am the law. I'm taking these 2 today, no matter what. If you dare to stop me, that's defying orders. I'll arrest you too. Mayor Mason was also there, fanning the flames. His tone was sinister. Alfie is right. Don't waste words with them. Just take them away. These 2 are deserters anyway. Chloe is harboring deserters. She should be punished too. Her land can be confiscated. I sneered coldly. I turned and grabbed a hefty chunk of silver from inside, and banged it hard on the table. The silver crashed onto the table. A loud bang echoed. It stunned everyone. This silver is enough to prepay 3 months' taxes. I reached out and picked up the teacup on the table. With a little force, the teacup shattered into pieces. Shards scattered all over the floor. I warn you, if you keep making trouble for no reason, I'll go straight to the magistrate's office and tell Magistrate Sterling and Mrs. Sterling. Then, you'll be in deep trouble. Mrs. Sterling is the magistrate's wife. She has always been fair and strict, and she's an old acquaintance of Victor's. Victor once mentioned that if I ever run into trouble, I could ask Mrs. Sterling for help. Officer Lewis and Hugo heard this, and their faces changed instantly. They knew well how formidable Mrs. Sterling is. If they caught her attention, at best they'd lose their jobs. At worst they'd be charged. Then they looked at Luke, his military demeanor, his sharp eyes, obviously not someone to mess with. It instantly deflated their confidence. Mayor Mason still wanted to persuade, but Officer Lewis glared him into silence. Officer Lewis pocketed the silver. His tone softened. Since Miss Chloe has paid all the taxes, and even prepaid 3 months, let's forget about it. But you must keep an eye on these 2. If anything goes wrong, you'll be held responsible. Having said that, he then gave Mayor Mason a hard glare and left with Hugo. They left disgruntled. Seeing this, Mayor Mason didn't dare to stay either. He slunk away after them. The yard finally quieted down. Finn breathed a sigh of relief. Chloe, you're amazing. Luke and Sam also stepped forward to thank her. Thank you for saving our lives, miss. Words cannot express our gratitude. I smiled. I knew deep down that after this incident, the Fletcher family's authority was firmly established. No one would dare mess with us again. A few days later, a heavy snow fell suddenly, and the temperature dropped sharply. The seedlings and herbs in the nursery shed were at risk of frost damage, so I immediately decided to build a greenhouse, using straw and mud for insulation to make sure the crops survive the winter safely. As soon as the word got out, Finn, Luke, and Sam immediately took action, each doing their part without a single complaint. Finn went into the mountains to cut thick branches to build the greenhouse frame, as he was strong and fast. It didn't take long before he finished the frames for 3 sheds. Luke was in charge of mixing mud and plastering the walls, mixing straw with mud and applying it to the shed walls to keep the wind out and the heat in. He was meticulous, making sure every spot was sealed tightly. Sam was thoughtful and careful, taking care of preparing the soil inside and transplanting the seedlings and herbs, and he also dug a simple fire channel in the shed, ready to light a fire for warmth. I guided the 3 to adjust the greenhouse angle to maximize sunlight absorption, and taught them to cover the roof with thatch and add burlap at night to lock in even more heat. During breaks in the work, Finn would secretly hand me hot water, and Luke and Sam would volunteer for the hardest tasks so I wouldn't freeze or get worn out. They worked hard for 3 whole days and finally completed the greenhouses. Looking at the neat greenhouses and the green seedlings inside, Luke and Sam exchanged a glance, walked up to me, and solemnly cupped their fists. "Miss, you treat us with sincerity. You are brave and resourceful. We want to follow you faithfully, miss, and guard this home together. No matter what trouble comes our way, we'd give our lives without hesitation." I looked into their sincere eyes, then turned to Finn beside me, whose eyes were full of tenderness, and warmth filled my heart. That night, the 4 of us sat around the fire, eating hot food and talking about our plans for the future, and the room felt warm and cozy. My eyes accidentally met Finn's, and his ears turned red as he quickly looked away, but his eyes were full of undisguisable affection, and a subtle ripple stirred in my heart too. After the greenhouse was built, I got up every night to check on it, worried the temperature would drop or some wild animals might get in. That night, I was just approaching the greenhouse with my lantern when I heard faint chewing sounds coming from inside. My heart tightened. I tiptoed into the greenhouse, and by the dim light of the lantern, I saw a few rabbits nibbling on the seedlings. "You little pests," I hissed. The rabbits got spooked and scurried out of the greenhouse. I chased after them with my lantern, trying to drive them far away so they wouldn't ruin the seedlings again. I ended up at a barren hill outside the village. The rabbits dashed into a cave and disappeared. I was about to turn back when I caught a whiff of familiar plant ash. I followed the scent, and by the moonlight, I found a hidden spot on the barren hill with a natural deposit of plant ash, piled thick, fine in texture, perfect for improving the soil. What surprised me even more was a mountain spring nearby, clear and sweet, with a steady flow, perfect for irrigating the fields and the crops in the greenhouse. Plant ash enriches the soil and prevents pests, and the spring water is high quality, both essential for high crop yields. Excited, I walked around the mine and spring, carefully studying the terrain, and marked the spot with stones to keep it hidden from others. Then I quietly made a plan. Every morning, I had Finn bring some men to carry a small amount of plant ash, to avoid drawing attention, and we also dug a simple irrigation ditch to channel the spring to the field pillars and greenhouse. On my way back to the hut, I felt light on my feet, overjoyed. With this natural treasure and the greenhouse cultivation, the crops are bound to thrive. Not only can we meet the Golden Vine restaurant's needs, but we can also expand to other markets. No more worrying about taxes or making ends meet. This family is finally getting out of the rut. Over the next few days, we dug simple channels to irrigate with spring water and transported plant ash in batches to improve the soil. The seedlings and herbs in the greenhouse grew stronger. Their quality was far superior to before. When the second batch of fine cabbages and the first batch of bupleurum and astragalus were ready, I packed them properly and went alone to deliver them to the Golden Vine restaurant. Finn needed to stay and tend the crops. Luke and Sam were busy reinforcing the channel. Everyone did their part. Just as I arrived at the entrance of the Golden Vine, I saw a maid in green pacing anxiously back and forth. It was Tracy, Mrs. Sterling's maid. When she saw me carrying a vegetable basket, her eyes lit up. She hurried over, grabbed my wrist, and said, "Miss Chloe, I've finally found you. Please save Mrs. Sterling." My heart tightened. I quickly asked for the reason. Tracy sobbed that Mrs. Sterling had gone to offer incense yesterday and was bitten by a rabid dog. Now she has a high fever that won't go down, and she's delirious. Dr. Ruby, the manor's physician, diagnosed it as a cold, but the medicine had no effect. She was desperate for fresh lettuce as a medicinal ingredient, but couldn't find any good quality anywhere. A rabid dog bite is definitely not a cold. Any delay could lead to disaster. I immediately put down the vegetable basket and said to Tracy, "Take me to the magistrate's office quickly. Your mistress doesn't have a cold. It's an acute illness from the dog bite. Any more delay and it will be too late." Tracy was skeptical, but had no other choice. She quickly led the way to the magistrate's office. The inner courtyard of the magistrate's office was tense. Magistrate Sterling was full of worry. Dr. Ruby was holding a bowl of medicine, about to feed it to Mrs. Sterling. I hurried forward to stop Magistrate Sterling and Dr. Ruby. Absolutely not. The lady is showing early signs of rabies from the dog bite. It's definitely not a cold. Taking cold medicine will only trap the poison inside and worsen her condition. Upon hearing this, Dr. Ruby's face darkened, and she scolded harshly, "You country bumpkin, what do you know about medicine? All you know are some folk remedies. How dare you come to the magistrate's office and interfere? Are you trying to harm the lady? Harm the lady?" Magistrate Sterling also looked doubtful. He furrowed his brow. "You, a farm girl, how could you understand this disease? How sure are you that you can cure my wife?" I nodded firmly and said, "I have emergency methods and folk remedies. I am willing to try. If anything happens to Mrs. Sterling, I'll stake my life on it." And Dr. Ruby was totally against it. She slammed the table, insisting the magistrate must not do this. "We don't know where this farm girl comes from. If her folk remedy hurts the lady, who's gonna take the blame? Better to call in some well-known physicians for a consultation than to let her do whatever she wants." Magistrate Sterling looked at the lady on the bed, her face flushed, breathing rapidly. He hesitated for a long time, and in the end, desperate times called for desperate measures. He granted my request. "Fine, I'll trust you this once, but if you try any tricks, I'll grind your bones to dust." I didn't have time to argue with Dr. Ruby. I told Tracy right away to get strong liquor, clean cloth strips, and charcoal. Then go to the Golden Vine restaurant and get the buplorum and honeysuckle vine I brought. Once the supplies were ready, I had everyone step outside and stayed alone in the sick room. First, I used the strong liquor to repeatedly clean the wound on Mrs. Sterling's arm, then used a clean blade to scrape off the necrotic tissue around it. This is a modern emergency debridement technique to remove as much toxin as possible. Then, I heated the cloth strip with charcoal fire and applied it hot to the area around the wound to stop the spread of the toxin. Dr. Ruby saw from outside. She stomped her feet in anger and yelled, "You are harming the law. Someone, stop her. Sir, stop her." I ignored her yelling and continued to mix the mashed buplorum and honeysuckle vine with a small amount of realgar and applied it to the wound. I also brewed a decoction to clear heat and detoxify, and fed it to Mrs. Sterling spoon by spoon. The whole process lasted for nearly an hour. I stayed by the bed, closely watching Mrs. Sterling's pulse and temperature. At first, she still had a high fever and convulsions. An hour later, the convulsions gradually stopped, and the high fever went down a bit. Her breathing steadied, and she slowly opened her eyes. Weakly, she asked for water. Tracy was overjoyed and quickly brought some warm water. Magistrate Sterling rushed into the room, and seeing his wife conscious, he was so emotional he could barely speak. He turned and bowed deeply to me. "Thank you, miss. You saved my wife's life. I was too blind to see your skill." Dr. Ruby stood aside, her face turning pale then red. She never dared to mock again and quietly slipped out. I let out a sigh of relief and instructed, "Although the lady is stable for now, she needs to take the medicine for 3 days straight. The wound needs daily debridement and dressing changes. Keep it away from water, and she must not get emotionally excited." Magistrate Sterling agreed repeatedly, and immediately had people prepare as I instructed. 3 days later, Mrs. Sterling fully recovered. She sat in the courtyard, basking in the sun, full of energy. She grabbed my hand and thanked Miss Chloe from the bottom of her heart. "You saved my life. I'm forever in your debt, and I can never repay you." Magistrate Sterling immediately pulled out $10,000 and shoved it into my hands. "Please take this small gift, miss. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." I didn't say no. That money could really improve our family's life and let us grow more crops. At the same time, I also brought up the matter of Luke and Sam. "Sir, I have 2 routed soldiers from the Western Vanguard staying with me. They're not deserters. They're with me because their unit was ambushed and scattered. But people keep harassing them because of it. Please, sir, vouch for them and clear their names." Mrs. Sterling and the magistrate looked at each other and agreed it was easy. The Western Vanguard are all loyal and brave soldiers. Routed soldiers are not deserters. I'll have the magistrate issue a certificate stating they were scattered in battle and not deserters, and stamped with the official seal. From then on, nobody dared bother them. That afternoon, Magistrate Sterling wrote the certificate and handed it to Luke and Sam himself. The 2 men held the certificate, their eyes red. After years of injustice, they were finally cleared. When Victor found out I saved Mrs. Sterling, he sent someone with an invitation inviting me to the Golden Vine to talk about working together. When we met, he smiled and said, "Miss Chloe, you not only grow great vegetables, but you also know medicine, which is truly admirable, and I want to expand our cooperation. So all the vegetables and herbs you grow, the Golden Vine will take them all, and will raise the price 10%, and can also pay a deposit up front. What do you think?" To which I happily agreed. With the magistrate's office backing us, and a steady channel through the Golden Vine, the Fletcher family's life was finally secure. The Fletchers are thriving. Luke and Sam got a certificate from the magistrate's office. Nobody dared mess with them anymore. That made Mayor Mason, Greta, and Alfie even more bitter. They were gnashing their teeth in anger. The 3 hid at Greta's house. Their faces were dark as hell. Alfie clenched his fists. His eyes blazed with malice and greed. That bitch Chloe not only messed up my plans, but also helped those two routed soldiers get back on their feet. And now she's even sucking up to the magistrate's wife. I'll make her lose everything, and take her for myself. Mayor Mason sighed, his tone full of resentment. Magistrate Sterling's protecting her. If we confront her openly, we're no match. We might even get ourselves into trouble. Greta gritted her teeth. A vicious scheme flashed in her eyes. If we can't do it openly, then we'll do it in secret. Alfie, you always wanted her, right? We'll tie her up, and force her to comply. Either marry you, or hand over all her money. Then we'll label Luke and Sam as deserters again, and sell them to the army as forced labor. We'll get money, and get rid of those two thorns in our sides. Kill two birds with one stone. Alfie's eyes lit up. He thought the plan was viable. Mayor Mason added, I'll get Officer Lewis and Hugo on board. They already hate Chloe for ruining their plans, and are greedy. As long as we promise them a cut, they'll surely be willing to help. When Chloe goes to town alone to deliver veggies, we'll grab her and hide her at the trading post. It's run by a distant relative of Officer Lewis, very discreet. Then we'll send someone to the Fletcher place to arrest Luke and Sam, claiming they fled to escape punishment, and profit from selling them off. The group readily agreed. They divided the tasks immediately. Mayor Mason went to contact Officer Lewis and Hugo, promising them $5,000. Greta stayed in the village to find out when Chloe would go to town. Alfie and his men would lay an ambush on the only road to town, waiting for a chance to kidnap her. A plot against me was brewing. They were just waiting for the right moment to strike. A few days later, I took some freshly picked spinach and astragalus and went into town to deliver them alone. Since I only had a few supplies, and my previous trips had been smooth, I didn't have Finn and the guys come along. Just as I reached a quiet alley outside the city, Alfie burst out with a few men. Behind him were Officer Lewis and Hugo. My heart dropped. I turned to run, but two of them grabbed my arms. I couldn't move a muscle. Chloe, let's see who's gonna save you now. Alfie grinned viciously. He reached for my face. I spat right in his face. My eyes were cold as knives. You shameless bastard. You're kidnapping me. Aren't you afraid Magistrate Sterling will skin you alive? Officer Lewis sneered. He said smugly, the magistrate's far away at the office, and by the time he finds out, you'll already be Alfie's woman. By then, it'll be too late. And even if he wants to protect you, he'll have to save face. They roughly shoved me into a carriage. Bumping along the road, they took me to a brokerage in the county town, and locked me in a remote, dark woodshed. Meanwhile, Finn, Luke, and Sam waited till sunset, but I never showed up. They were freaking out. They went around asking. Just then, their neighbor Mr. Jones passed by the Fletcher family home. Seeing the three of them so worried, he quickly said, I went into town this afternoon to run some errands, and in the alley outside the city, I saw Miss Chloe get taken away by Alfie and Officer Lewis and the others. Looked like they headed toward the brokerage. You gotta go find her, quick. Hearing this, they were burning with fury. Without a second thought, Finn grabbed his hunting bow and a hatchet. Luke and Sam each grabbed farm tools and their personal daggers, and rushed all the way to the county town. On the way, Luke said calmly, the brokerage isn't heavily guarded, but Officer Lewis and Hugo are armed. We can't take them head-on. First, let's check things out, then make our move to save her. Finn nodded with red eyes. No matter what it takes, I'm bringing Chloe back. In the woodshed, I acted like I was playing along, stalling Alfie who was guarding the door. Meanwhile, I secretly scratched at the rope around my wrists. The rope was thick, but rubbing it back and forth, it slowly loosened. Just when the rope was about to come loose, I heard a faint sound outside the door, and I knew Finn and the others had arrived. I deliberately raised my voice and said to Alfie, if you let me go, I'll give you all my money, and I'll beg Magistrate Sterling to let you live. And sure enough, Alfie took the bait, pushed the door open, and was about to speak when Finn lunged from behind the door and struck him on the shoulder with a cleaver. Alfie screamed and fell to the ground. Luke and Sam rushed in too, and subdued the two guards at the door. I took the chance to break free, grabbed a wooden stick from the corner, and stood shoulder to shoulder with them. Working together, we soon pinned down the other thugs in the den. Officer Lewis and Hugo heard the commotion and came running, saw it was bad, and tried to flee over the wall, but Luke and Sam held them back. Just as we were at a standoff, Mrs. Sterling arrived with officers from the magistrate's office. Tracy, worried about me, had secretly told Mrs. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling immediately sent officers to follow. The officers swarmed in and arrested Alfie, Mayor Mason, Greta, Officer Lewis, Hugo, and the rest. They were taken back to the magistrate's office for processing. Crisis over. Finn grabbed my hand, his eyes red, his thumb gently rubbing my wrist. Chloe, I was so worried. I'm glad you're okay, and I shouldn't have left you alone. Luke stepped forward and silently brushed the dust off my clothes, his fingers brushing against my neck. He said in a low voice, next time you go to town, I'll go with you. I won't let anyone hurt you again. Sam then brought some warm water and carefully helped me drink a few sips, his gaze so tender it could melt. Chloe, you've had a scare. I'll make you some calming herbal tea when we get back. The three of them looked at me, their eyes filled with worry, heartache, and undisguised admiration. The atmosphere was both intimate and sincere. Looking into their earnest eyes, my heart warmed, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Looking at their sincere eyes, my heart warmed. Later, thanks to Magistrate Sterling, I got Luke and Sam discharged from the army, so they could leave their past as routed soldiers behind. After bringing them back to Oak Haven, we scaled up our planting and introduced better crops and farming methods. Not only did our family prosper, but we also helped the whole village. In this chaotic world, we made our stand through farming, carving out a path with our own hands. As autumn deepened, the Fletcher family's greenhouse had grown into a neat, orderly farmstead. Golden rice stalks bent low, and the greens and herbs in the greenhouse looked fresh and tender. The villagers were busy harvesting, their laughter echoing across the fields. Finn, bare-armed, carried a sack of grain, sweat dripping from his jaw, but he still glanced back at me on the ridge, grinning, the warmth in his eyes even brighter than the autumn sun. Luke stood by the field's accounting office, carefully checking the harvest records. As his fingers traced the ledger, his gaze would unconsciously drift toward me, but he'd quickly look away whenever our eyes met, a faint blush creeping up his ears. Sam came over with freshly brewed honey water, his steps gentle. When he handed me the bowl, he carefully avoided touching my fingers, and softly said, "It's hot, have some to soothe your throat." As dusk settled, the farmstead grew quiet. In the cottage courtyard, the firewood crackled, and the table was piled high with a harvest feast. With braised wild fowl, fall off the bone tender, refreshing cold mixed greens, and fragrant mixed grains, the four of us sat around the table. Finn kept piling food into my bowl, picking out the tenderest pieces for me. Luke silently pushed the shelled nuts toward me, while Sam tended the soup pot, ladling me a bowl of hot soup every now and then. I looked at the three of them, each so different yet equally sincere, and a deep sense of peace washed over me. Magistrate Sterling and Victor sent gifts, along with a note offering to recommend us to introduce these better crops to neighboring counties, so more people could survive these chaotic times. I raised my bowl and said with a smile, "For this journey, I'm so thankful to have you all." Finn raised his cup and echoed, "I'll stay with Chloe forever, protect this farm, and protect our home." Luke and Sam exchanged a glance, and nodded at the same time, their tone firm. "So are we." Moonlight spilled into the courtyard, softly washing over the four of us. There were no grand declarations, just everyday companionship and care. In this chaotic world, we found our roots in farming, and leaned on each other. We took a dilapidated thatched cottage and turned it into the coziest, most vibrant home. In the years ahead, may we always have peace and happiness.